No one noticed her at first. Brown cardigan, flat shoes, a fabric bag slouched over one shoulder like an old habit. Just a woman swallowed by a rainy Tuesday. No hurry, no name, no reason to remember, until the bag slipped off her shoulder. It didn't crash, just enough for something inside to roll across the marble floor a glint. Not money. Metal. Etched. Cold. She bent down, no hesitation, no surprise, picked it up like it had fallen before. Put it back. No explanation. But the air changed. The guard looked up. The man in the corner stopped chewing gum, and when the officer called her name, she simply replied soft like wind through a crack in the door, "I carry what I'm not allowed to lose." And in that moment, the whole room began to wonder, had they just overlooked someone dangerous, if you've ever passed by someone without knowing the weight they carried? This story is for you. At first, no one said anything. But the silence after that glint, it lingered. Claire Whitmore stepped back in line like nothing had happened. Her posture steady, her eyes focused ahead. But the guard kept watching. Something about her felt too composed. People shifted in line. Phones were put away. Even the man chewing gum now had his arms crossed. Claire didn't check her phone, didn't glance around. She stood there like she'd stood in lines more dangerous than this one, like she'd waited in the places where names mattered too much. When Officer Dale called her again, he added a little pressure to his voice. She met his eyes, calm, clear. "If this is about the ID, she said it's the right name. Whether it's the full story, that's another matter. Sometimes people don't hide because they're afraid. Sometimes they hide because the world never asked the right questions." Officer Dale motioned her over to the secondary table, one of those cold metal ones near the wall where the lighting feels just a little too bright. Claire didn't argue. She stepped forward, unslinging the bag and setting it down gently like it contained something fragile or something sacred. The moment her fingers left the strap, Dale snapped on a pair of gloves. Too fast. Too eager. "Standard procedure," he said. Claire gave a polite nod, but didn't smile. The first zipper opened with a rough sound. Out came a water bottle, a folded windbreaker, and a pair of worn running shoes. Normal. Predictable. Dale raised a brow. "Gym gear." Claire didn't answer. She just looked at the bag like she already knew what they'd find next. Sometimes people pack light. Sometimes they pack history. And when you've carried things long enough, you stop needing anyone to understand. You just need them not to drop it. Dale reached for the next zipper. It stuck for a second, then gave way with a sharp tug. He pulled out a black notebook. Plain. Worn at the edges. The kind of notebook that doesn't mean much until you open it. He flipped it. No grocery lists, no phone numbers, just rows of numbers, coordinates, timestamps, symbols that didn't belong to any gym schedule. Dale frowned. "What is this?" Claire stayed quiet for a beat. Then, "My notes. Notes on things I wasn't supposed to forget." Ramirez, watching from behind, let out a dry chuckle. "Well, that's not cryptic at all." Claire turned to him. Calm. Unshaken. "Some people write to remember. Others write so no one else forgets. There are people who need recognition, and people who need protection. Sometimes they're the same person. Sometimes they can't afford to be." And the longer Dale held that notebook, the less sure he seemed of what he was holding. Dale set the notebook down like it might start whispering if left open too long, then reached back into the bag. Out came a sealed envelope, thick paper, the kind that looked official. Wax seal, deep red. No return address, just a line etched across the front to be returned only if operational failure. He glanced at Claire, but she was looking somewhere past him, past the room, like her mind had stepped 20 years backward. He slid the envelope closer to himself, hesitated, and then reached in again. This time he pulled out a photograph. Faded. Military grade. Claire, 10 years younger in a black uniform with no insignia. No flag. No nameplate. Ramirez squinted at it. "What?" "Unit, is this?" Claire answered without looking. "One that doesn't exist. Not on paper. Some people live quiet lives. Others live erased ones. And sometimes the cost of silence is everything you used to be." Dale placed the photo down gently, as if noise might wake something better left sleeping. He reached into the bag one last time, but this time it wasn't him who pulled something out. Something small. Metal. Slid out from a hidden lining and landed on the table with a soft clink. They all stared at it. Not a coin, not a key, a badge. Flat-brushed steel, etched with a hawk in mid-dive. No name, no department, Just a number, 713A. Dale picked it up, turning it slowly. "I've never seen anything like this." Claire said nothing. Didn't blink, didn't reach for it. Claire looked at the badge, didn't blink, didn't reach for it. But her mind wasn't in the room anymore. "The last time I held that," she thought, "was after digging up the grave of a teammate we were never supposed to mourn." She didn't say it out loud. Some memories don't survive explanation. Sometimes silence is the only way to carry what you were never meant to bury. But the silence around her felt heavier now, like she'd brought a storm with her and the room had just realized they'd forgotten an umbrella. "That's not for anyone here," she finally said. "It was never meant to be found. But I carry it anyway, because some reminders aren't for forgetting. They're for remembering who you had to become just to survive." By now, the chatter in the waiting area had faded. Not because anyone told them to quiet down, but because something unspoken had entered the room. The badge still sat between them, plain, unassuming, terrifying. Ramirez crossed his arms, but his voice had lost its edge. "So, what is it? Some kind of old agency ID?" Claire didn't answer. Not at first. She just looked at the badge the way someone might look at a gravestone they never visited enough. Then softly, "It's not about who I worked for. It's about what I couldn't walk away from." People shifted in their seats. Even Dale, who'd been playing the role of gatekeeper minutes ago, was now glancing toward the hallway as if someone should have arrived by now. Because the truth was settling in. This wasn't about protocol anymore. This was about a woman who carried something none of them could define, but all of them suddenly respected. Dale cleared his throat loud like he needed to prove he still belonged in charge. He motioned toward the last compartment of the bag. "We'll need to check everything, ma'am." Claire didn't move. Not in defiance, but in that unnerving, patient way only people with nothing left to prove can master. "If you're sure," she said, "then be careful what you call evidence. Some things in there outlived the mission." Ramirez hesitated, then slowly stepped back. Just an inch, but it was enough, because suddenly this didn't feel like a search. It felt like trespassing. Dale looked around, half expecting a supervisor to appear. None came. That's the thing about real authority. It doesn't wear a name tag. It doesn't raise its voice. It just makes others question their own. And as Dale reached for the zipper, his hands were no longer steady. The zipper gave way slowly, like even the bag didn't want to open anymore. Dale reached in, then paused. What he pulled out wasn't marked like government files usually are. No seal, no barcode, no department stamp. Just a black leather folder. Simple. Quiet. And, across the front in small gold letters, Level 9 eyes only. Ramirez leaned in. "We don't even have a Level 9. Claire didn't move. "Most people don't," she said gently. "That's the point." Dale opened the flap halfway. Inside a card. Her photo. No agency name, no expiration date, just a single title, Operations Specialist Division, and below that, Shadow Lark. He looked up. "That's not in our clearance chart." Claire tilted her head. "Course not. You only list what you're allowed to acknowledge. Some people build their lives on visibility. Others serve in the space between silence and necessity." Dale closed the folder with more care than he'd shown all morning, like he'd just touched something sacred or radioactive. Ramirez didn't say a word. He didn't have to, because around them the room had shifted. The woman with the stroller stepped back. The man in the business suit stopped pretending to read. A teenager, quiet until now, lowered his phone mid-record. People didn't understand what they were seeing, but they knew enough to stop laughing. Claire stood motionless. Not smug, not proud, just still. "You're not in the system," Dale said almost to himself. Claire finally looked at him. That's the difference between a file and a function. One gets archived, the other keeps running. Some legacies are loud photos, medals, stories in a book. But others, they're what's left when there's no story to tell, only a room full of people suddenly standing straighter without knowing why. Dale reached once more into the bag and pulled out something tightly wrapped in black cloth. He hesitated, unfolded it slowly. It was a uniform. Military grade, but not standard issue. Sleek, shadow dark, no rank, no flag, just the hawk insignia again stitched on the shoulder silver against black. Claire didn't move, didn't blink, but you could feel something shift. Ramirez whispered, "I've never seen this cut before. Is it real?" Claire looked down at the jacket for a moment, then met his eyes. It was issued, not earned, not chosen, just given. after I became someone else, because sometimes the uniform doesn't mean status, it means survival. Some people wear it for pride. Some, because there was no other way to come home. And for the first time, no one in the room looked at Claire like she was dangerous. They looked at her, like they'd missed something important. For a long moment, no one spoke. The uniform lay on the table still almost reverent. The badge gleamed under the lights. The sealed folder remained untouched beside it all. Dale stepped back just slightly. Ramirez looked at him, then at Claire, then at the crowd that had quietly grown behind them. No one laughed anymore. No one coughed. Even the toddler in the corner had gone quiet. "We should probably escalate this," Dale murmured, but even he didn't believe the words. Ramirez folded his arms, not defiant, just unsure. Claire said nothing. "Ma'am," Dale offered carefully, "this isn't a standard situation." Claire's voice when it came was steady. "That's why you're hesitating, because deep down you know this was never meant to be handled by protocol. There's a kind of respect that isn't taught. It's felt when the room finally understands they're no longer the highest authority in it." The elevator bell dinged a soft, almost forgettable sound. But the moment the doors opened, the entire room noticed. A man in a charcoal suit stepped out. Tall, still, composed. No ID badge, no rush. Behind him, 2 uniformed aides followed, but it was clear they weren't leading anything. They were there because he was. He didn't glance around. His eyes found Claire instantly, and his pace never broke. Dale straightened. Ramirez stepped back. Someone muttered, "Sir, this area's restricted." The man didn't stop. He didn't answer. He simply reached the security line, paused, and said low but clear enough for the whole room to hear, "That woman is exactly where she's supposed to be." No raised voice, no show of force, just presence. And just like that, every sense of control the room once had disappeared. Because sometimes you don't need permission to be in charge. You just are. He stopped just short of the table. Didn't reach for her. Didn't salute. He simply looked at Claire the way only someone who's read the unredacted chapters could. Claire didn't smile, but something in her shoulders eased. "You're late," she said quietly. He nodded once. "Gatekeepers," he replied. "They don't always know what they're guarding." Ramirez blinked, looking between them. "Sir, we didn't realize." The man turned his head slightly. Not harsh, not accusing, but with that calm that makes men feel smaller without ever being insulted. "That's the problem," he said. "You weren't meant to." He looked back at Claire. "Are you ready?" Claire's answer wasn't immediate. She glanced at her bag, her jacket, the folder, then met his eyes. "I've been ready. I just didn't know if anyone would still remember, because even the strongest hearts still ask, did what I gave matter?" No orders were given. No one told Dale or Ramirez what to do next. But something in the suited man's silence said it all. Dale reached for the black folder, first his hand slower now, more careful. He closed it, wiped the edge with his sleeve, then slid it toward Claire without a word. Next came the jacket. Ramirez folded it clumsy but sincere, the way someone might return a flag at a funeral. He set it down gently, eyes avoiding hers. The badge, the notebook, even the envelope. All returned. Not as property, but as proof. Claire accepted each item the same way she had arrived, calm, unshaken. But her fingers lingered on the badge for just a moment longer. "Thank you," Dale muttered, "for whatever this was." She didn't reply, because sometimes acknowledgement doesn't come with answers, just a softer way of being seen. Claire gathered her things without rush. No dramatic gestures, no lingering looks. Just the quiet efficiency of someone who's done this before. She slid the folder into her bag, folded the jacket over her arm, fastened the badge to the inside pocket where it always lived, out of sight, never out of meaning. No one told her she could leave. She didn't ask. The man in the suit stepped back, not to guide her, but to clear the way. Around the room, people stood a little straighter. Not out of fear, out of something older, something closer to reverence. She didn't say goodbye, but before she turned toward the elevator, she looked at Dale, then Ramirez. "Protocol is meant to protect people," she said, voice even, "not to humiliate them. Don't forget that." And just like that, the woman they once called suspicious became the one they couldn't forget. They walked side by side through the hallway. Not hurried, not escorted, just 2 figures moving through a place that suddenly felt too small for them. Claire adjusted the strap of her bag. The suited man said nothing. He didn't need to. "You kept the name," he finally said, almost like a question. Claire nodded. Names are anchors. I didn't want to drift. They erased most of the files, he added, even the training logs. Claire looked ahead, voice calm. Good. That means it worked. For a moment, they both walked in silence. 2 lives built on silence, on shadows. You think they'll ever understand what you gave, he asked. She gave the faintest smile. They don't need to. They just need to be able to stand in places we once had to crawl. Because legacy isn't always about being remembered. Sometimes, it's about making sure no one else has to be forgotten. As Claire neared the exit, the air behind her stayed hushed. No clapping, no fanfare, just the sound of soft footsteps and the echo of things no one dared ask. But just before she reached the glass doors, a voice low and steady broke the silence. Ma'am. Claire turned. A man in his 70s stood near the bench by the window. Retired military by the look of him, creased cap in hand, spine still proud beneath an old wool coat. He didn't ask who she was, didn't need her rank or story. He simply raised his hand in a sharp practiced salute, one he hadn't given in years. Claire paused, returned it, just as crisp, no words, just 2 people, one who had walked through history and one who recognized the footprints she left behind. Because sometimes the loudest thank you is silence held with respect. The glass doors slid open with a soft hiss. Claire stepped out into the daylight gray clouds, giving way to a soft patch of sun like the sky had been waiting for her. The suited man followed but stayed a step behind his presence, steady, unspoken. Outside, the city moved on. Cars passed, phones rang, no one looked twice. And that was the point. Claire adjusted the strap of her bag. Not heavier, not lighter, just settled. She glanced once over her shoulder, not out of regret, but as if to take one final snapshot for herself. Funny, she said more to the air than anyone else you spend years erasing your name. And it still walks out with you, because some victories don't need parades. They just need to be carried far enough to make sure someone else never has to earn them the same way. Claire turned the corner, just another woman on the sidewalk. Brown cardigan, flat shoes, a cloth bag. Invisible again. But one young man noticed, barely 20, hoodie, earbuds, phone in hand. He glanced up just for a second, paused. She didn't stand out, didn't make eye contact, didn't say a word. But something about her, the way she walked, the way the crowd seemed to part without trying, it made him pull one earbud out. He didn't know who she was, didn't need to. But as she passed, he felt something tighten in his chest, like he was near a story he wasn't old enough to hear yet. He watched her go. Didn't chase, didn't speak. Just held the moment like a question he'd carry for a long time. Because sometimes the people who change the world the most are the ones who walk past us without ever asking to be seen. Claire boarded the bus like anyone else. No one offered her a second glance. She didn't expect one. Took a seat near the window. Bag on her lap. The same one they had emptied an hour ago, now zipped. Still quiet, but somehow heavier with meaning. The city passed outside, brick buildings, food carts, people with umbrellas too late for the rain. She rested her palm lightly over the bag's side pocket where the badge now sat. Not to check it, not to protect it. Just a reflex, like muscle memory from years of carrying things no one else could. "You okay?" the driver asked, glancing back in the mirror. Claire looked up. "Fine," she said with a softness only earned by surviving what no one saw. "Just headed somewhere no one waits for me. Because some returns don't need a welcome. They just need a quiet place to land." The bus sighed to a stop on a quiet side street. Claire stepped off. Gray sidewalk, empty lot, no signage, no security. Just a brick building with faded paint and one door wooden, weathered with a brass handle that hadn't gleamed in years. She didn't knock, didn't pause, just stood there for a breath as if the air itself held memories. Then slowly she reached into her bag. Not for a key, for the sealed envelope. The one marked, "To be returned only if operational failure." She held it like it had a pulse. "Never thought I'd carry you this far," she whispered. There was no one to hear her, but sometimes that's how healing begins, not with applause, but with finally letting go of what no one else knew you held. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The door creaked softly behind her. Inside, silence. Not the cold kind, but the kind built by years of secrets waiting to be set down gently. A single room, dust in the light. Metal shelves lined with boxes, none labeled, none locked. Just rows of memory no one claimed. Claire stepped inside. Each footstep felt like it echoed across years. She reached a cabinet in the back, low, unremarkable. Opened it. Inside, space enough for what she brought. She placed the envelope first, then the notebook, and finally, after a pause, her badge. Not with ceremony, but with care. "It doesn't need to be remembered," she murmured. "It just needs to stop following me." There was no plaque, no witness, only the soft sound of a drawer sliding shut. Because sometimes dignity isn't found in being honored, but in knowing exactly when to let go. Claire stood still for a moment, looking at the drawer she'd just closed. Not as if it held regret, but like it held the part of her that never fit in daylight. No tears, no sigh, just breath. Unloaded. She stepped back. Her hand lingered on the cold steel handle, then fell away. There was nothing left to say, which for once felt like peace. "It's not about being known," she whispered, "just about not being forgotten by myself." She turned, walked slowly toward the exit. The dust didn't rise behind her. The floor didn't creak again. Some doors don't slam shut. They just ease closed because they were waiting for you to finally stop holding them open. And as Claire stepped back into the light, there was no ceremony, only the unmistakable quiet of someone who no longer owed the past anything. The door clicked shut behind her. No lock, no code, just a quiet seal on a chapter that didn't need to be reread. Claire stood on the sidewalk again. Same shoes, same bag. But something was gone now. Not lost. Released. She breathed in, not like someone escaping, but like someone who'd finally arrived. The street carried on. Delivery vans, birdsong, the hum of a city that never asked questions. She didn't need directions. Her feet knew where to go, and though nothing about her had changed to the eyes of strangers, something in the rhythm of her walk was different, lighter, not faster. Present, not restless. "I'm not disappearing," she murmured. "I'm just done proving I was ever here." Because for some people, healing doesn't mean being seen again. It means being able to walk without explaining why you were ever invisible. Claire turned the corner and stepped into a quiet cafe. No line, no music. Just the sound of mugs clinking, a ceiling fan humming, and the soft scrape of chairs on old tile. She chose a seat by the window, not for the view, but for the space. The server approached, pen in hand. "Just coffee," Claire said. "Black." The woman nodded and left without fuss. Claire settled in, hands around the warm cup when it came. No phone, no watch checking, just presence. Outside, people passed, unaware of the woman inside who had once walked through classified corridors, who had once disappeared on purpose. This, she thought, is enough, because sometimes the greatest need isn't to be remembered by many, but to have one morning where no one asks you to be anything but still, and in that stillness Claire exhaled, like she'd finally earned it. The server returned, refilling Claire's cup without asking. No rush, no interruption. Then a soft voice. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need. We don't mind the quiet ones." Claire looked up. The woman smiled, kind, not curious, not searching for who Claire used to be, just acknowledging who she was now, someone sitting, someone breathing, someone being. Claire nodded, almost surprised at how much that meant. "Thank you," she said. "Most places, people assume you're waiting on someone." The woman shrugged gently. "Some folks come in just to stop carrying something for a while." And just like that, without knowing a single chapter of Claire's story, the woman had understood the heart of it, because you don't always need the right words. Sometimes you just need the right silence. And in that moment, Claire felt something she hadn't in years. Belonging without explanation. Claire finished the last sip of her coffee, still hot, still black. Exactly as it had always been, but it tasted different now. Simpler, quieter. She stood slowly, smoothing her sleeve, lifting the bag that no longer held secrets, only space. At the door she paused, looked once more at the woman behind the counter. "Thank you," Claire said, "for the quiet." The woman nodded. "Come back any time. You don't have to buy anything to sit still." Claire smiled, the real kind. Not practiced, not polite, just honest. And then she stepped outside. Same sky, same city. But this time she didn't blend in to hide. She blended in because she finally could. Because sometimes what we need isn't a new identity, but permission to live as ourselves without needing anyone to decode us first. Claire walked into the afternoon light. No destination, just direction. She passed families holding ice cream cones, a dog barking at pigeons, a teenage boy leaning on a bicycle glancing up just in time to catch her silhouette. She didn't look back. Didn't need to. But the boy watched her for a few extra seconds. Like something in her movement, quiet, purposeful, had shifted the noise inside him. He didn't know her name, would never ask. But part of him knew he'd just seen someone worth remembering, even if he didn't know why. Behind him, life went on. But in his chest, a stillness stayed. Because sometimes the ones who leave nothing behind give us something we never had before, a reason to walk softer, to listen deeper, to notice the ones who don't need to be noticed. And that's how Claire passed through, not erased, but complete. You won't find her in any records, not the kind you can search anyway. Her file was closed before it was ever opened. Her name, if it's remembered at all, will live quietly in a glance, a gesture, a pause in someone else's step. But if you've ever felt safer without knowing why, if you've ever walked freely while someone else stood still, then maybe, just maybe, you've already passed someone like Claire, someone who didn't want thanks, didn't ask for memory, just carried what needed to be carried until no one else had to, because some victories don't wear medals, they wear silence, and some heroes don't need stories, they just need one person to know they were real. So, if you're still here, if this stayed with you, then carry it forward. Gently, like she did, for the ones who serve quietly are never truly gone.